Hey Lancers, today in the middle of July here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what is called the Biotic Index and actually walk you through the protocol, collect some data, and so you kind of have some idea when we start looking at data how this was done. So, Biotic Index is a scale that's used to determine the water quality using the types of organisms that are present. Sometimes fish, but more useful are the macroinvertebrates, which are those things you can see visibly without a microscope, and they don't have a backbone. They're very important to uh, food source for many fish and other organisms. They don't move a lot, so that makes them pretty good in terms of determining the relative health of something right at that time. And they vary a lot in their tolerance to pollution. So what needs to happen is to do this survey, you usually have to get obviously into the aquatic environment. You use what's called a D net that this scientist here has with some waders. And then you start sweeping, and I'm going to walk you through that. And you start collecting these organisms. And you'll need to sort these organisms and determine, for example, this one's a mayfly and a caddisfly and a stonefly, and which category they would go into. This protocol we adapted and started using in Edna Taylor about 10 years ago to kind of get an idea of the relative health of those different retention ponds and evaluate the ecological service of the wetlands in terms of filtering. Do we see evidence that the water's getting cleaner as it passes through this system? Um, so how we're going to do this is a worksheet, and we'll be tallying the different types of organisms in the different groups, mainly focusing in on the groups 2 and 3 in the system that I'm going to be looking at. So what we're going to be doing is going to a section of the Yahara River, which has moving water, but it is very much like a lake system, very eutrophic system. And so I don't anticipate numbers to be much higher than what we see at Edna Taylor. One of the key species we're going to be looking for are dragonfly nymphs, which, like this green one you see in the picture, and looking specifically for the larger dragonflies, which are even better indices of water quality. So, take me to the river. Let's go. Hey Lancers, Mr. Harrison here on location on the Yahara River. Connects what is Lake Labisa up just to the north of us down to Lower Mud Lake. You can see this is a stretch which connects the Yahara Lakes, which is flowing. So we're going to be assessing the biotic index. And you remember the biotic index is the evaluation of the macroinvertebrates that live here, and what does it tell us about the health of this area, and what does it tell us about the impact of human activities. Okay, I'm going in. Holy blue-green algae, Batman. Come in and scoop kind of in the emergent vegetation, which is this on the edges. That's where you're going to find your dragonflies and some of your more sensitive species. Some are going to be in the benthic zone. So if you come on in here, you can see some of the things we're finding. Some really big snails here. These are probably pouch snails. We're going to look at those later. They'd be in our third category. Here we've got a damselfly larva. Well, damselflies are semi-sensitive to pollution, and they're going to make our biotic index go up. See lots of little beetles. The beetles are not going to tell us so much. Most of those are breathing air. We have some different types of beetles. Here's a predatory diving beetle. Another snail. I'm going to throw all these in and we're going to take a look at them. Okay. All right, we're back at the house. Here's a data sheet that we're going to be using today, having the different macroinvertebrates in their respective tolerance categories. I've got some buckets set up here. I'm going to basically sort them based on what category they're in. And I've got our sample set up in a fish tank with aeration. So I'm going to get started with this bucket right here and going to see what I find. Okay, so we're going to do some sorting here. I have Charlie and Liam helping me out today. We got some buckets set up and we're going through the water sample that we collected down at the Yahara. And we've already added quite a few specimens in our different categories. So stay tuned. So Charlie, what'd you find?
Found a damselfly larva.
Damselfly. Let's take a look at it. Cool. What category?
2.
Alright, nice. Here we have a pretty interesting, I think, organism called the caddisfly. This is a caddisfly larva. It encases itself in plant material, substrate, and then it has a little protective home. Many of them are very important in terms of being primary consumers of detritus, leaf matter, dead material that floats down in rivers and streams. Pretty neat little organism. And it is in group 2, the caddisflies. Another mayfly larva. Also here is what's called a scud. And I've heard mixed things, or freshwater shrimp, mixed things about the scud amphipod and its tolerance. It has moved in different categories, and I think there probably is, if you tease apart the individual species, ones that are more tolerant than others. But here it is, the scud, and it's going to go into amphipod into category 3. One of the important things to do in a water sample is to look for things like invasive species, and here we have zebra mussel, which is pretty well established in the Yahara Lake system, finding its way in ballast water through the Great Lakes of large boats, and then hopping rides on smaller boats to lakes throughout the United States. Going to have big detrimental impacts on ecosystems as a primary consumer.